And I was coaching people 2 to 3 decades older than me who were way more lost, way more scared, way more stuck than I was at 22, 23, 24. And I remember just really being taken aback by that and realizing nobody knows what they're doing. We're all making it up. We're all just giant children in adult bodies, still figuring out who we are and what we're doing. One of the big things that I do with my clients is we go through about a month of emotional literacy, because the way that you process and experience your emotions and the energy around you is so unique to you, and you're going to speak your own language based on when you were first presented with that energy. What were the circumstances? Did you feel safe? Did you not feel safe? Were you in survival mode? What happened there that wired this way? And it becomes very important for people to understand their emotional language and landscape, and understand, okay, when I say this to myself, I actually mean this.
Liv, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the space to talk to you and share my message and shine my light online.
Yeah, you're welcome. I've been looking forward to this. We had a little, well, I say a little, similar thing happens before the podcast with Scott. And for the listeners, you're Scott's wonderful partner that he spoke so highly of. So Scott Holliday, for anyone who hasn't seen that, was an episode that came out maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago on this one. And yeah, we did the same thing. We had a little chat pre-podcast, and it was getting to the point where I felt like, stop, we need to stop because this should be recorded. So,
Yeah, it was a
so
very lovely conversation. I was pretty lit up after it.
yeah, me too. So I've been looking forward to this, and here we are. So, where should we start?
Oh, my mom always used to say, in the middle. In the
The middle is
middle.
a good place to start.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can just start by introducing myself and saying a little bit about myself that feels like it wants to be spoken.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so my name's Liv Wickedly. I'm 32 years old. I currently live in Austin, Texas with my partner Scott and our two dogs. We got a little pug named Otis and a 12-year-old Collie Shepherd mix. And I have been on a journey of spiritual realization, healing, consciousness, self empowerment, all that good, juicy stuff for about 10 years now. And I got started working for my mom, actually. She is a really successful leadership coach. And I got lucky enough that, she hired me for some little things here and there in college. And I was doing such a great job that she just kept hiring me for things. And as it would turn out, when I went and got my degree in environmental sustainability, I thought for sure I'm going to come to Austin and there's just going to be so many job opportunities. And for whatever reason, the universe just was not clicking it together. I would go to these interviews, I would kill them, just walk out feeling so great. The recruiters would be like, they loved you, your interview was awesome, you'll know in a few days. And I just kept getting rejected or denied. And the reasons, they never had good reasons. Oh, no, you were a wonderful candidate. We just went this other way. Or like arbitrary things like this person has 2 more years of Excel experience. Just things that I'm like, well, there's absolutely nothing I can do about that. So at some point, I just surrendered and I said, all right, I'm just going to do something to make some money. I had been a nanny a lot in high school, so I just went to nannying for 6 months to just give myself some space to breathe. And wouldn't you know it, I was doing work for my mom, and they had this other woman who she ended up having a baby, and so she wasn't really showing up to her job all that well anymore. And so I just saw these opportunities where they could hire me for way less, and I could do a lot more. So I put together my first business proposal, and I sent it to her and her business partner. And it's so funny, they thought that either one of them had put me up to it. And when they had the conversation and realized I did it from my own initiation, that's what got me the role. I said, that great, that's the spirit we're looking for. We're looking for initiative. And I was like, great, I got a ton of that. So I got to shadow and train in executive leadership and coaching. They were doing a lot of work for conflict resolution inside of organizations with teams that were experiencing high levels of turnover and dysfunction. And that was so, so, so powerful for me because it was my introduction to what I like to call the matrix, the system, without me having to be inside it. And the longer I was doing this work, the more I was like so grateful I did not get hired for any of these things. I had these big wake up moments. I got certified in crucial conversations and Gallup Strengths Finder, and I had helped them develop enough training and curriculum that they let me loose with individual clients. And I was coaching people 2 to 3 decades older than me who were way more lost, way more scared, way more stuck than I was at 22, 23, 24. And I remember just really being taken aback by that and realizing nobody knows what they're doing. We're all making it up. We're all just giant children in adult bodies, still figuring out who we are and what we're doing. And I remember around the time I turned 25, just feeling this really intense desire to shift that for my generation and the ones following. I was walking people through midlife crises that just seemed so unnecessary. I mean, necessary in the sense that that's the path that they chose and that's how they, created their learning. But thinking there's got to be a smoother, more receptive, more in tune way to move through our suffering. Like there just has to be. This can't be the way we have to do this. So I really just doubled down on showing up for myself. 25 is when I was talking to my mom about intention setting and those things. It was a pretty new concept to me. She was teaching me about it. And she had this little trick where she would write her intention on a piece of paper and put it in her breast pocket. And so it was right on her heart. So she'd never forget it. It was always just right there. And if she did get lost, go to the bathroom, pull it out, read it, rebrand, come back to it and show back up in that space. And me being a little more extreme than her, I was like, I'm just going to tattoo it on my heart. Fuck it. It's going to be there all the time. I can't forget. I'll see it in the mirror all the time. So that's when I got this tattoo, which I don't know if you can say, but it says know thyself. And I committed to that. One, it's my family crest on my mom's side. So I felt deeply called to that when she said that that's what it was. And then I did some reading on the philosophy of know thyself. And what I loved was there's no destination. It's a journey. It's a path you choose. And I thought, what a beautiful compass, you know? Um, and it's been my guiding light since then. And in this journey, I've come to know the love and unity and possibility of being human for all of us through living it myself. And so much of my message since then has been about permission to be you all the way. Um, my highest value is freedom of expression, and with that, free will choice. And when I say my highest value, I come from this place of, okay, if the whole world goes to shit, what are the things that I'm going to stand on a hill and die for? I'll fight for them because I wouldn't choose to live in a world where those aren't possible. And that's what came first, was freedom of expression. And then unconditional love and joy. If those three things aren't available on this planet and no one else wants to co-create those, I'm out. I'm just going to fight to the death. So I started to really create this really powerful grounding inside myself, to become a North Compass, and through that realized all the places I was conditioned, all the places I was out of alignment, all the places where I wasn't living those values. And I've just been on this journey and mission to get into this deep level of alignment and be so rooted in my truth and unconditional love for myself that it just pours out into the world around me. And this has taken me to now, I've gone through many different iterations of my business and my career. And now I'm really, really focused on doing this with and for women in particular. Not because I don't love men. I've had so many lovely male clients. They're amazing. And I love working with couples. But my calling really is deeply related to my own experience. And I have way more expertise in being a woman than I do in being a man. So I've really niched down into this space. And through this process, what I'm in now is really healing all the woman wounds I have internally, and learning how to hold and be held and create unity through actually unifying in communion. There's just such a lack of communion. And I think COVID was actually a really powerful experience to move through and realize how isolated we all are. So that's kind of where I come from, at least in my work, and then where I'm sitting now and what I'm looking to create moving forward.
Thank you for sharing that. So there's quite a lot I'd like to dissect and ask you about.
Great.
How was it for you being someone in your early 20s working with people that were 2 or 3 decades older and kind of witnessing this realization of these people are really struggling and I'm far younger? And maybe at one point we thought that with age would come wisdom and more understanding and kind of having your shit together more.
Yep.
How was it for your experience in seeing that and maybe it being turned on its head?
Yeah, I love that you asked this question because I actually had a very strong visceral reaction at first, and it was anger. It was so much anger. And that was actually really important and powerful for me because anger was the most dangerous emotion to me when I was growing up. I made that choice. There was a lot of anger thrown at me early on, just out of an abusive father. My mom's a really powerful lesbian woman. So she went through a lot of crap, especially like, in the 90s, the early 2000s. She's actually experiencing sexism and homophobia still, where she lives with her neighbors. And her anger was pouring out in that because she processed everything through that. And then my brother just would pick up her energy, and there was just so much anger around me. And it felt violent and unsafe. So I disallowed it. I just wouldn't feel it. So I was one of those deeply repressed and then have a nervous breakdown people. And so when I was being confronted with this and realizing I had been told and promised all these things, and of course at this point I was living in the reality of paying back my student loans and realizing I'm not even using my degree. I don't even know if going to college was worth anything because I just have this really expensive piece of paper and a lot of memories of partying a lot, and in that anger, because there was no one to throw it at, there was no one to project it at. It was just this realization of how life works. It was kind of the first time that I had to sit with it for myself and create safety in my body in that way. And what I realized was that emotion can be extremely fueling and propelling when it's used to push you into the light. So in feeling that, I just extended my individual experience to, oh my God, my whole generation is experiencing this. Like there was this promise of the American dream and this promise that if you follow all these steps, you're going to live the best life possible. And here, for the first time in our generation, that dream was fucking crumbling. And so that anger really propelled me to commit to a mission in some way. And that's where I was like, I'm disallowing this. This is no longer acceptable for us as a species. I'm going to play my part, however big or small that role is. I'm committed to it. I'm breaking these curses. I'm done with this. We're done with this. So
Mm.
it was really kind of the thing that pushed me into a purpose of some sort outside of just working to make money so that I could, I don't know, just that, oh, you need to work to make money and start a family. Okay, why? All those things. And now I finally was connected to a purpose. It was really my first experience of safe anger, and realizing that can be a really powerful tool to fuel you into something great.
Wonderful. Do you think, and this has never come up for me before as a consideration, but the American dream, now I'm not from America, but I'm familiar. Do you think originally the American dream was built on freedom?
Yes.
And there was a lot of people that moved to America that didn't experience freedom, where they arrived there, felt like they could become. There was the freedom to become, and then so that was maybe achieved for a certain generation. Then there was a generation that was born into that actually already had maybe the freedom that their ancestors didn't. And it almost seems as though the American dream, which might be largely based on freedom, actually the pursuit of freedom became the prison.
Yes.
And the thing that people were pursuing actually became the opposite. It actually trapped them rather than freed them.
Yeah, I that feels really astute to me, and that resonates with me deeply because a lot of what I feel is we have a concept of freedom, and I don't think many people truly know what it is to be free. What is that actual experience? A
Yeah.
lot of our concepts of freedom come from our circumstances. And if your circumstances have to be a certain way for you to feel free or be free, well, you're a prisoner of your circumstances. You're a slave to your circumstances. And anytime life changes, which it's guaranteed to, well, we're not guaranteed anything. Anything could change at any point in time, and for many of us, it does. The pandemic, again, being a really good example of that. Nobody was expecting that. Nobody was ready for that. Um, and as I really started to get into this work, I started to realize the words that we use are really important. And the concepts and infrastructure we have in our minds around those words really direct our relationship with them. And there's an energy and whatever, the way that I conceptualize it is like you're given a box of what this thing is, from the people who are teaching you, and they're either teaching you consciously or unconsciously, mostly unconsciously, I think, in previous generations. And so there's an idea of freedom. And our ideas of freedom when I was growing up were apple pie and baseball and voting and American flags and fireworks. And they were all aesthetic. And then I was looking at the reality of how we live and seeing we still have indentured servitude, this whole debt cycle that everybody's in over here. It's not everybody, but most of us are in here. That's just indentured servitude with fancy titles and names that you seemingly opted into. It was your choice, but then again, were you given a choice? No. When you go to high school, you go to college, you go to, right? And even if you didn't want to do that, there weren't really many options. You're going to have to be a bartender or a car mechanic, or you're just going to be fucked if you don't do this. And even just not being allowed into certain spaces if you don't look a certain way and have a certain social status. Like all of these things are prisons, right? Those are all cages. And the more I started to ask myself, what is freedom? What the fuck is that? Around the time I was 25, I also shifted out of doing resolutions, and it just came to me in a meditation to just pick a word and be with that energy and experience it all year. Create that experience for myself so I could know it. And the first one I chose was freedom. And the more I got into that, the deeper I got, the more I realized my freedom comes from within. It comes from me. It's my choice. Who says if I'm free or not? Well, I don't want my circumstances to tell me that. Even if I'm locked in a cage and chained up, I don't want my circumstances to tell me that, because then I'm a slave to my circumstances. And I was reminded of this man I learned about in high school. You're probably aware of him, Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor. Yeah, we read a lot of his work, and I just remember in one of his stories, I think he was in several concentration camps, but I think the one he tells the story from is Auschwitz. And he just talked about how no matter what was going on, and we're talking about this man is literally experiencing the worst of human nature, the absolute worst. No matter what was going on, he knew that his dignity couldn't be taken away. His hope couldn't be taken away. His self-respect, none of that could be taken. That was his choice to keep or not. And he chose to keep it. He chose love. In the darkest of circumstances, he chose love. And I remember that clicking with me and going, that's fucking freedom. That's a powerful creator. And my heart's just like pounding when I say this. And I was like, okay, that's my path. That's my model. And that to me would be the dream if we're in one. We all feel free and empowered, and we are not we are not less powerful than our circumstances. We're more powerful. Yeah, that's where I sit on that today.
It's beautiful that you share that. And before I say what I'm about to, for the listeners that might be interested in Viktor Frankl, it's so Man's Search for Meaning is the book that's well known that he did. But getting back to what you said about freedom, so I've just been building my kind of offering, which is going to be a longer coaching program, starting out at 6 months, but actually over time I think I'm going to make it a 12-month program, and it's called Freedom Within.
Oh yes.
And it's myfreedomwithin.com. And it's, for me, it's broken down into 3 segments. It's the freedom from the past, being free of all the story, the things that we hold on to, both on the individually, like, unconscious level, but also the collective unconscious, being free of our past, of our story. Then the second phase is the freedom to be who you are, fully expressed in the depth and the essence of your soul, the way that the divine intended you to be. And then it's the freedom to become. The freedom to become, not from a place of emptiness, not from a place of lack, not from a place of my ego desires this, but from a place of my heart and soul yearns to become the way that an acorn yearns to become an oak tree. It's not because it's wounded, it's not because it's got an ego, it's not because it's got something to prove, but within its fabric of existence, there's a yearning to become that because it knows that's what it was born for. And the offering that I have been really working on for the last 6 months of really, like, so much time spent on this, and I'm bringing in kind of guest teachers for it, but it's, yeah, there's freedom within. It's the freedom from the past, the freedom to be, and the freedom to become. And for me, I think sometimes people think they're searching for happiness. I don't think it's happiness. I think it's a sense of freedom, that freedom within.
Yeah, I love the architecture of that. The way that you have broken that down, I was like, that has been my exact path. And I've just arrived in this freedom to become space. And the way Scott and I talk about it is like we got out of the pit of victimhood and now we're on level ground and we're just in pure creation space now. The past is no longer my reality. You know, I've let those things go. And I remember when I had this moment because there was a lot of this rhetoric, especially in the spiritual community, when I started my healing work, that you're going to be healing forever. You're always going to be healing. And once I started, getting more refined in my coaching, more refined on my path, more information, more resources, more tools, more teachers, I realized that's a story, that's a narrative, that's a spell I'm casting. I will always be working on my healing if I say I will always be working on my healing. What if in this moment I just choose to be healed? What if it's just a choice I get to fucking make? Hey, I'm good. That shit happened. I'm still standing. I'm better for it because I choose to be. I'm healed. And I remember I did that. I like to do I do guided psilocybin journeys with people. So it's one of Scott and I's favorite things to do, especially with couples. And I like to guide myself through them. It's actually how I got very proficient as a guide. Everything I do it for myself first, and I'm like, all right, I can do this for somebody else. And so every now and then I'll feel called to one. And I was in that journey. And as soon as I made that choice, so much light came in. And I was like, all right, great. I get to move on from this chapter. And the becoming is the becoming is like learning through suffering while you're on a boat of pleasure. Like you're in the middle of the storm, but this boat is just keeping you safe and whole. And you're like, oh, wow, it's storming. Okay, moving through this. Whoa, man, I made it through that. Hell yeah. Okay, on to the next thing. It's just a lot. It's less sticky and it's not heavy. That like heavy feeling that you can experience when you're just like weighing yourself down with my mom did this and this happened to me and all these things are happening in my life and I have no control. When you just really go, no, these things are simply happening. I can choose how I experience this. I may not choose my initial triggers, but I can choose what I do with them.
I literally just came off a coaching call before this, and I gave an analogy that I've never used before, just kind of came up, and it's the identification with our story, with our thoughts, with the things that we hold on to. When we think they are us, they define us, it's like a lead balloon, it's heavy. And when we realize that I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my opinions, I'm not my beliefs, I'm the creator of all those things, we can turn those lead balloons into helium balloons. And they might still be there, the balloons might still be there, but it's a lot easier to move through life with helium balloons rather than lead balloons.
Yes, yes, yes. That really resonates with me as well. I love that metaphor. It's really beautiful. And I'm even thinking about when we have these identity attachments, and they could be something simple like, oh my gosh, I actually had this really profound experience last week during my sister's birthday, where I realized I caught my mom's voice in my head, and I was like, wait, that sounds like my mom. And when I kicked back and looked at it from that perspective, I was like, oh my God, this is my mom. I thought that was me. I thought that was my voice. Oh my gosh, that was my mom. And I was like, this comes from when I'm like somewhere from 0 to 7. I was like, oh my God, I'm like way back there in my headspace. And when I kicked out from that, all these things just started unraveling. And I realized I've been lying to myself and everyone else about my favorite color. I made a choice very early on when I was a little girl. There was a box of what kind of woman to be and a box of what kind of woman not to be. And a lot of the things that were in the box of what not to be were actually things that I deeply identified with and liked, but they were too feminine to be safe and too feminine for me to be taken seriously and too feminine for me to succeed. So I put them in a not safe box. And I realized this is so funny. I go to the nail salon to get my nails done. It's like my favorite girly thing to do. And I always look at the hot pink first. Every single time I look at hot pink. And then I immediately talk myself out of it. And I choose my color based on what I perceive other people will think look good on me. And I've been doing this for such a long time because it's something I started doing with my mom when I was really young that I didn't realize I was doing it until I realized I was doing it. And literally that day, I just spoke it out loud. I was like, my favorite color is hot pink. And as soon as I said that, this identity attachment just let go, and this whole box of what not to be as a woman just fucking disappeared. And then all the things were on the floor in front of me. And I was like, I eliminated all of these possibilities. That's not freedom. That's a cage. I don't have to choose these things, but making them impossible, that casts shadow. It's prison.
Yes, 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 and yes. And congratulations on the nails. I see them.
Oh,
I
I
love them.
immediately, yeah, this was what sparked it. I literally would tell myself, one day I'll do hot pink. One day I'll do hot pink. Apparently it was last week I chose hot pink, and literally having it on my feet and nails, I was like, I love this. Oh my God, I love this. Is this my favorite color? Ah! Yeah.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. I think I think it's realizing, and again, kind of one of the things that I bring up with the people that I work with in a coaching manner, and maybe the thing that I always try to point out to people just in general, we are all of it. We're everything. We're literally all of it, and to deny any part of it is to deny your humanity, because within your humanity, it's all of it. So if you want the pink nails, you have the pink nails, right? And there's that voice in the back, which is maybe the inner critic, which is saying, I can't have that for this reason, because if you have that, it means this. And there's that voice that's always subtly playing. It's like an air conditioning unit that's been on for a lifetime. It's very hard to hear it. You get so used to it, that white noise. And I think if people can bring awareness to that critic that is telling them, I'm not allowed to do this, I don't have permission to do that, and to notice it, but then next layer, because a lot of people, when they notice it, they start to condemn the critic, which, by the way, is also a part of you, and it's also a part of your humanity. So please don't judge the judge, don't judge the critic in you. Realize, oh, that's there for a reason. It's tried to serve me. It's actually tried to serve me throughout my past, because it thought it had to. It thought I had to be this good person that followed these parameters. But now I realize I don't. But thank you, inner critic. Thank you for being there. Thank you for trying to guide me, for doing your best, the best that you knew. But I can take over from here. And thank you. I love you. But I've got it now. And actually, all of my humanity deserves to be here.
Yes, absolutely. We're so guiding and coaching people in the same ways in our own words. I love it. I'm like, yes, that's exactly the space that I hold and the possibility that I reflect to people. And it's so wild because something as simple as not giving yourself permission to enjoy your favorite color is ultimately not giving yourself permission to be you. And then inside of that, we get completely disconnected from our desires. And then when we don't know what we want, we do start living for everybody else, what everybody else thinks we should do. Or we look at other people and go, that looks great. Let me go that direction. And then we start walking that way and it doesn't feel right. Or at least, in my experience, that's just what it's been. I kept looking for a template, and you can pick and choose things that you admire in other people and other walks to walk so you can apply it to you. But ultimately, there is no one like you. We're all the same and we're all different all at the same fucking time. And so yeah, I'm really enjoying just doubling down on this space of when the critic is talking, I go, I'm listening. I just surrender. I'm like, okay, she's here and she's teaching me something. She's speaking in a garbled message that doesn't feel very good, but there's some truth here. And so I've been so much lately going, okay, I'm listening. What are you
Mm.
teaching me? What are you showing me? And when I'm willing to receive that part of me, she's got wisdom. She learned something. It's just up to me to hear what the lesson is and then follow up on it. And it's almost as soon as I listen and I make a choice about what to do with the information, the voice goes, oh, okay, I can go to bed now. And then she's quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like you've got to learn how to speak the language.
Yes. Yes. One of the big things that I do with my clients is we go through about a month of emotional literacy,
Mm.
because the way that you process and experience your emotions and the energy around you is so unique to you, and you're going to speak your own language based on when you were first presented with that energy. What were the circumstances? Did you feel safe? Did you not feel safe? Were you in survival mode? What happened there that wired this way? And if it's not in alignment, maybe we realign. Maybe we let that go now because it's not serving you anymore. And it becomes very important for people to understand their emotional language and landscape, and understand, okay, when I say this to myself, I actually mean this. When I feel this experience, it's masking this. Or, oh, this triggers my nervous system to go back to a time when I was 7 and not safe. I'm in a completely different circumstance now. I am safe. And just like rewiring and recasting that spell.
Yeah. When it comes to the work that you do with women, how much collective shadow do you think women carry? And by that, what I mean is we all have our individual things, our own story, the own things that we've been through, the things that we carry from the past. But also then there's the collective wounding. For example, being a woman, how much of the things that your clients kind of are dealing with are their own versus how much is actually kind of a collective thing that they're carrying the weight of for their entire gender?
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting, because what I've noticed now, and this is why I was like, okay, I'm going to step fully into this women's space. I've had enough female clients now and done enough of my own work to realize there's maybe tops 7 different experiences of energy, and then it's our interpretation of that we're living in alignment with. So I've gotten to this place where I can receive the energy and pick up on the pattern beyond the details of the word, right? Which is a beautiful space to be as a guide, because they're lost in the weeds. And I'm like holding a flashlight and I'm like, yeah, I see that. Do you see this path over here? You could totally get out of that if you want to. You can stay here. It's well within your rights. Your choice. As long as it's conscious, I support it. But if you want to, it's right over there. And I've just noticed the most common thing that the women who choose to work with me come to me with is just the suppression of their voices. They feel like they don't have a voice and they cannot speak up with themselves for themselves. And there's typically really shitty to no boundaries. And then this deep disconnection and unsafety in the body, which makes it impossible for them to be present with what is. They're typically living in the past or the future or some combination of both. And when you ask them very simple things about what they want, almost panic sometimes, because it's like, I don't know, I don't know. And I remember when I was at that point in my journey, I was married for 8 years. That was one of my self-designed prisons. um, I I was getting connected to my sexuality and walking down that path because I'd done a lot of work everywhere else, and I was like, you're avoiding your sexuality. I know you are. Let's look at it. So I started looking at it, and I happened to call in an intimacy coach. He used to be an OM practitioner, so he was light years ahead of me and had a lot. I didn't even know that was a goddamn thing. You can meditate with a pussy, okay? So he's teaching me all of these things, and I started absorbing all this information about different relationship templates outside of traditional monogamy, and my mind was just being blown. And I started coaching with him with my husband at the time to just see if we could, make it work. And it kept coming back to, Liv, what do you want? Liv, what do you want? And I would literally go into a freeze panic state. And it took me some time to realize I've cut off my access to that because what I want feels unsafe. It was unsafe growing up. So what I want isn't going to keep me safe. I need to worry about what everybody else wants, keep the peace with everybody else. And then maybe one day I'll get to have mine. And that's just I noticed that with so many women. It's so innate to just deprioritize, put yourself last, and then do aesthetic things again, like the concept of freedom, the concept of self care. So go get wine with your girlfriends, go get a massage. Like all these things are great and lovely, but if they're coming from a place of bypass and avoidance and it's not this deep, nourishing thing you fully choose, you just keep abusing yourself and abandoning yourself and betraying yourself. And at some point, we stopped being victims and we became abusers. We become the perpetrators. And that's a lot of what I undo is like, Mama, you're victimizing yourself. This powerlessness you feel, it's not real. You had a real experience, but your powerlessness, it's not real. And that's just the number one thing. It's just, hey, you're fucking powerful if you choose to be. Exactly the way you are. You don't have to change a damn thing.
Yeah, that was really, really well explained. And I think that's what I notice is the people can not realize their power because they're so lost in the belief that they're holding on to. And actually it's a thought. It's a thought that you've truly believed to be real. But outside of that thought, who are you? You want what you're capable of. And it's these invisible constraints that get put on us over time. And it's interesting what you said about women and not having a voice. And one of the things that I've kind of how I navigate a lot of coaching, I really kind of connect to the chakras through the body. And if you think from here down, from the throat down, if people have been bypassing going into the body, all those, the four chakras below the throat, the first three really deeply rooted in sense of self. It's hard to have a voice. It's hard to express who you are when you have no idea who you are.
It's impossible almost. It's like shooting an arrow in the dark. Like, oh, I hope this works. Yeah, it is. I also I love to use the chakra system as well. And just on that note, it's in these chakras down here, it can just feel terrifying to venture down there because a lot of the women I work with have experienced sexual trauma or abuse, or they've gone into a place of such deep self-loathing that they have eating disorders, or like I've had a lot of former Mormon women come and work with me to decondition all of the boxes that women go into. The box over there is so small, and it's usually they go through some kind of tragedy or their husband dies or whatever, and then they're like, I'm free and I need to shift this. I can't live like this anymore. And those things are so heavy in your root and sacral, and they're they're terrifying to go back into because when you don't complete an experience, meaning you don't get back to love, it almost feels like before you go into it that it's going to kill you. You know, our limbic systems are very simple and they don't necessarily process the difference between fear of a memory and fear of imminent death. And so if you chose that that will kill you, when you go in to feel that experience, you get so scared. I can't tell you how many women are so afraid of their emotions that they don't want to feel them because they're afraid they're going to get lost in them forever and they'll be depressed forever. When the irony is bypassing them is what keeps you depressed. Those lead balloons are just weighing you down. They're just sitting in your belly, literally. They're in your womb space. They're in your like most feminine place. Of course, that's going to feel like it's going to kill you because it is killing you. Your spirit, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think why a lot of people we talk about bypassing that will very often, for example, maybe go and do some of let's say Jodie Spencer's work, and which is wonderful. But maybe they're straight away, they're thinking like, we're going straight to the third eye, to the crown, to this lovely, we're going to manifest, we're going to create our reality, we're going to connect to it. And maybe they can access those kind of states and realms, but it's built on nothing. It's built on no depth. And it's really, it's the fable of the wise man built his house upon the rocks. those rocks are those deep foundations of taking the time to build on something solid. So if we're building that vision for the future, what we want to create, what we want to manifest, attract, but we've actually done none of the foundation laying to build that on, then when the waves come in, it just smashes down the house. And interestingly, that also shows up in the story of the three little pigs. Right?
Yes.
The house of straw, the house of sticks, the house of bricks. And I was explaining this to my daughter when she was about 3 or 4, that this is what it actually means, what the sticks and the straw represent, but the bricks, when the wolf comes to try and blow the house down, which is the things that show up in life. When you built the house out of bricks, it stands sturdy. And I think the only way we get there is by going down into these lower chakras, where some of the things that are the most frightening, the scariest things to confront. And it isn't pleasant. I understand why people want to go, let's go straight to manifest. Like, it makes, I get it. That's lovely. It's lovely to think about the future that you want and to try and hit those states in meditation. But man, those waves come in and that wolf comes and blows and it all comes tumbling down because yeah, it's, you've not confronted the real shit.
The root of the problem, yeah. Yeah, I love that you mentioned Dr. Joe. I'm a huge fan of his work, and what I notice is the two pieces that he does state are required in the process, but he doesn't necessarily break down how you have those experiences. So I think maybe sometimes people get ahead of themselves because this is all very exciting, and he explains things in just this way that it all makes sense, and we're like, oh my God, this is real, and he gives you all this permission, which I love, and it's just I've noticed a lot. I noticed this a lot with myself, and I've seen this mirrored in other people. When we're in our lows, we tend to manage those because we don't want to be in them. But when we're in our highs, we let our highs get away from us, and we don't show up in the same level of responsibility for those. And so people will ride this high of new information, and they won't have that depth, and they won't integrate, and they won't ground it, and they won't actually they won't do the manual work of tuning their nervous system into those realities. And two things that are required in his process are, one, to feel the emotional vibration of the energy you want to experience. So, in order to be grateful, you have to feel it in your body. You can't just say, I'm grateful, and then your mind conceptualize gratitude. That's an experience. We don't know what gratitude is unless we're truly feeling it. And a lot of people struggle with gratitude. This was my case for sure, because they're not living in their body to receive energy, to fully feel the love that's coming to them, to be grateful for it. And a lot of that comes from the bypass of, well, living in my body means I have to clean this out, and I don't know how to do that or what to do with that. So they're skipping like the two most important steps that would also make it. He also talks about visualization, right? You need to visualize and ground and connect in your body what it is you want to manifest. But people are coming in and they're trying to manifest things that aren't actually connected to them, right? It's an idea. It's an idea of freedom. Like it, money's a concept. It's not real. It's a concept. If we all just decided money wasn't worth something tomorrow, it wouldn't be worth anything. That's how not real money is. My feelings and the experiences I want to create as a result of receiving abundance, those are real. Those are tangible. And I know that because I'm experiencing them. And like Viktor Frankl taught us, those can't be taken away from us unless we take them away from ourselves. So I just noticed people bypass that piece. And you have to actually be in your body and connected to your desires to actually create a vision to manifest. You have to be purposeful and intentional. So people are kind of grabbing the toolbox before they have a blueprint for the house. And now they're just grabbing pieces of wood and nailing them together and hoping it doesn't blow over.
Yeah. And you know, even things like feeling the gratitude, I think sometimes unless you've gone into some of that deeper work, I think it can be hard to truly feel a depth of gratitude, because sometimes when we haven't gone down to address the things that we've been running from, we're always running from. And it's kind of hard to feel gratitude because we're always looking for something that's going to alleviate some of the anguish of me not feeling okay with who I am. So how do you feel gratitude when actually the underlying state that I'm in is I'm trying to escape me? It's quite hard to feel gratitude for life when you're living in that way. And for me personally, I found that it wasn't until I really went in to the things that I was running from and really went into it and got to the point where I realized I wouldn't change any of it, which meant I had gratitude for all of it. Actually, now I can start to experience gratitude for the most simpler things because I feel gratitude for the things that for the longest time I thought shouldn't have happened.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's in your curriculum, that's freedom from the past, right? Is getting to that place of looking back and going, I'm so grateful for every single thing. Every single thing was happening for me, not to me. And now that I choose to see it that way, I have fuel, right? Like that moment where I realized, oh, anger can be fuel. It doesn't have to be destructive and kill me. I can use it to jump into courage and take action, right? And I love it. My one of my really great friends has this beautiful tattoo on her wrist that says, "Fear is my compass." And I think about that all the time. The places I'm most scared to go, I know those are the places calling me. Those are the places that need the light, and those are the places that need my love. And when I'm willing to sit back and say, I'm listening and receive and experience those things, knowing no matter how much it sucks in this fucking moment, and I'll acknowledge it's shitty and I'm not enjoying it, but enjoyment is not required. When I get to the other side, I'm going to be in so much gratitude. And the payoff will be so worth it because one, I'll be free, and two, I get to experience gratitude, which how yummy. I fucking love that energy. I love that energy. It's so great. And it's when you vibrate in that space more often than not, and you realize gratitude is sustainable and it's renewable and you can never run out of it. Oh, you just start looking at trees and the sky and little interactions, and they're lovely and they're wonderful, and you fill your cup up, and then it becomes exponentially easy to pour out into things. It's just this beautiful cycle of when you do it for yourself, you automatically do it for the world. And I feel like that's also been such a huge part of my message is what if we gave ourselves permission to be selfish? Not self-centered, but selfish, because I can't take care of you the way you can take care of you. You're the expert of you, and you're the only person on this planet who ever will be. And if we choose to believe in unity, then we all go, or none of us go. And I can't drag you along on your ride. I can't learn your lessons for you. I can't alchemize this pain for you. I can't make your choices for you. Only you can do that. So, what if you take extreme ownership, which is the primary thing I teach, extreme ownership for yourself and your life and what you're creating, and you choose to be selfish in a way that you trust that whatever is truly authentically aligned for you is authentically aligned for everyone else. And then again, that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, what if you overfill your cup? What are you going to do with the overflow? Probably give it away. I haven't met a truly happy person that isn't contagious as fuck, and you can't help but be happy around them. Scott is one of those people. It's one of my favorite things about him. He's just so bright and shiny and high vibe all the time because he just chooses to see life through love. So it's like I'll be in a mood, and if he comes in the room and he's riding a high, it's just like I have to hop on his train, even though sometimes my ego's like, no, sit in the misery. And I'm like, nah, I'm gonna hop on his happy train. It's contagious, They say misery loves company, joy loves company even more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful to be around people in that energy because on the flip side, the opposite can be true. When people come in with that heavy energy, that can be contagious, and sometimes it can be easy. It can be easy to get pulled into that, and before you know it, you're joining in with the bitching and the moaning. And actually, some people, that's how they connect the most. I'll see some people like, "You fucking won't guess what happened." I'm like, "I bet you're gonna tell me."
Yeah, I really actually think that that's a really lovely, like practical place for whoever's listening to kind of start really building this self-awareness and this emotional literacy in the self. I really started my consciousness by focusing on how I was speaking to myself and what was I spending my time talking about? Recognizing the throat chakra is the manifestation chakra, and thoughts become words. So I started with honestly, I read this study that women are some ridiculous percentage more likely to apologize in spaces where there's no apology truly required. And the example they gave was like in classrooms, if a professor says, "Does anyone have a question?" It was pretty common for a woman to raise her hand, and when she gets called on, to say, "I'm sorry, but," and then ask her question. So there's like this innate built-in apologeticness for even existing or taking up any space at all, even when you're invited to. And when I read that, my whole body vibrated, and I was like, "Oh my God, I do that." And I flashed back to college, and I was like, "Oh my God, I do that all the time." And then I realized, "Oh my God, I apologize for taking up space all the time. If I have an opinion or a feeling or I want to add to something, I'll apologize in some way, or I'll dim the light by using like indirect language and sugarcoating things." And so I started with, I don't want to be someone who says I'm sorry when I don't mean it. That's crap. No one can believe my I'm truly sorry. Do I even believe I'm sorry if I'm just apologizing for myself all the time? So I started bringing awareness to that, and then that opened up the I say shit a lot. And then that opened up the I'm talking about other people a lot. Why am I choosing to spend my time talking about others? And why am I choosing to talk about them in a way that's not necessarily uplifting? And it just started to really bring me into awareness of how much negativity was coming out of my mouth without any intention to alchemize that or take action to create something different. I was just looping in it. And I think that's a really beautiful place for people to start, because you don't have to be an expert in this. You don't have to have any tools. You don't have to have a coach. You can just start listening to yourself. And if you feel like crap most of the day, your thoughts are probably shitty, and you're probably communicating the shit when you talk.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just having that awareness of like, what things am I talking about? What conversations am I drawn to? What things in general am I drawn to? It's like, a lot of people I think have caught on now to the act of like legacy media and the news and how it's just so much fear mongering and how inaccurate it is. And I think most people have caught on, especially I'd say more our generation. But if I think about like my parents, that would still just habitually watch. My dad used to watch the news. The first thing he would do in the morning was put the news on, and he would be watching the news as he fell asleep at night. Like imagine like the low level anxiety that would put on your nervous system if the last thing you are experiencing before you go to sleep is fear mongering media, and that's the first thing you experience when you wake up.
Yeah, you're so right. And as soon as you said that, I thought of my Mimi, because she was the same way. I don't know if she still does it. She's shifted a lot now. She's gotten older, and so she's like, I don't think this matters anymore, and she's letting things go, which is beautiful. Plus my mom and I are doing so much intergenerational work. It's like showing up in our family line, which has been really fucking cool to see. But she would do the same thing in all of my conversations with her, or at least most of them. She was just negative and scared of the world. She was scared of everything. And we talk about, when you're attached to your fears, you manifest them. And so, literally, I realized the other day, I am the walking embodiment of everything my grandmother has ever been terrified of. And my presence alone in her space, and me speaking up about my boundaries and not allowing, when I was like, "Hey, maybe there's no space for unkindness here anymore. If you want to have a kind conversation with me, I'll engage with you. And if you don't, I'm choosing not to anymore." And that was the first time I stood up to her like that. And that was so confronting for her. But the beauty was, I spoke it from truth and love. And she didn't like it. And she told me to never speak to her like that again. But she didn't violate that boundary anymore. And now all of our conversations are really lovely, and they're love focused. And we speak about people in their highest form. And I think even just that alone, having one space where she was called into that level of greatness, now she's just kind of vibrating there more. And I don't hear, "Oh my God, the world's falling apart, the immigrants that, the Democrats this." Like, I don't hear those things anymore, which is lovely.
My dad, bless him and rest his soul, used to do the funniest things and the most unconscious things. Like he would regularly complain about immigrants. As an immigrant, he moved from North Africa here and then would regularly complain about immigrants. And you couldn't help but laugh. I'm like, "Hey, Dad, are you are you are you aware of what's going on here?"
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I
Yeah,
hate to
there's
tell
a
you this.
that's super unconscious. There's no self-awareness in that. Yeah, no, that's actually, as soon as you said that, I was like, wow, that is so something that I'm really walking through my women with, is so many women don't like other women and they talk shit about other women. And I'm like, but you're one. So what are you telling yourself about you? And me starting to get into communion and create safety with other women, I have been healing all of these woman wounds, and all these places where I didn't have permission to be a woman are evaporating because I'm giving other women that permission. It's been wonderful.
I've noticed that for a long time that, very often the people that talk the most shit about women is women.
Yep.
And even like, I would notice it if I was out at a restaurant, or, if there's like women and then another woman walked in and they'd like say something and pass judgment. And I think maybe it's to do with, most often do it with someone that's potentially a threat to their position unconsciously,
Yes.
not by doing it at all, not realizing they're doing it.
Right.
But I think that's how it might show up. And it's interesting actually what you said about women being more apologetic, and that makes me wonder, did that start from a place where women felt the need to do that as a way of almost being protecting themselves at a time where, like, now I guess it's safer for women than it was maybe 100 years ago, where it wouldn't be unusual for a partner to hit the woman,
Right.
right? Like to smack the wife if she was speaking out of turn, quote unquote, right? And so I wonder if some of that like apologeticness for speaking up comes from that. I also know that young girls, I don't know how they measure this, but I'm sure it's like two or three times, like more have 2 or 3 times more social acuity than the boys of the same age. Their ability to be able to read facial expressions, and something to do with like evolutionary, because they don't have the same physical strength, that they start to learn how to read situations and people and their expressions better from infancy.
Yeah, actually, you're speaking a lot of things that resonate with my perspective from my own experience and from the women that I coach. And I think I think the last I heard, when it comes to epigenetics, which is like information passed down in our through our DNA, that's more informational about survival. It's more cultural. There's also like these untapped genes that we have that are like where we're evolving to, and epigenetics is the study and science of this. And we believe, at least the last I heard, and this was from Dr. Joe, that we can carry up to 14 generations of information in our DNA, which includes trauma. So if you think about when, I mean, women in the US weren't even able to vote until 1920, right? That's not that long ago. And there also, it wasn't that long ago. I think I was growing up when there were finally more laws being passed. And I grew up in Texas. The state doesn't love women all that much. Um, but where women weren't able to actually report if their spouses raped them, because it doesn't count as rape if you're married, right? So like these, I was growing up and like still like these things, and I mean even access to birth control, access to healthcare, like all this stuff is still fucked up. So if you think about like we've come so far, and also we're also carrying all the trauma from our matriarchal lineage. So it would make so much sense to me, and I do believe this, that women's need to be silent to survive would just keep getting passed down. And it's shifting and changing because there's more permission and freedom. And so more women are starting to speak up and give that permission, but it does take time to heal those things.
Especially if you think about that, like how quickly things have changed or how much has changed in the last 100 years. But that kind of that genetic coding that's been passed down through the lineage, it's like enough time hasn't passed by for the body and the feelings and the biological kind of hardwiring to catch up. So we've had a lot of things change in society, but actually within the body and the nervous
Right.
system, it's still there from, it may as well be 1800s.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm feeling really hopeful that that's going to be changing much quicker now, because we have access to this information, more people are aware of these things, more people are feeling called to these paths and these journeys. So I don't think that has to be the case forever, but as it stands now, I do notice a lot of that. A lot of women will just say, well, my mother was like this. My father was a narcissist. My mother did whatever he said. She really didn't have any freedom or autonomy. She was miserable all the time. She never did anything for herself. So just by the templated example of the primary female mentor that you have right when you're born, you're seeing what it is to be a woman, and how you react to that and your circumstances could completely determine whether you reject that entirely or you completely adopt it, or some mix of all of them. Usually there's a mix in there. And it's interesting when we were talking about media, because that's been a huge way in which I've processed my own experiences, because I spent a lot of time in front of TV as a kid. I spent a lot of time reading and playing outside too, but you know, in the summer you just have days and days on end to fill. And so I would consume a lot of media. And what I really realized as our there's just more creators out there. There's more access to more different kinds of television. We don't have networks controlling everything, saying what's going to make money, not make money. There's a lot more representation, and there's a lot more dynamics, and to the female characters themselves, and then also to their relationships with other people, including other women. And when I started to really like watch these newer things and go like with younger casts and go, oh my God, these I've never seen a woman relate to another woman like this on TV. This is fucking awesome. Why I went back and I started watching these movies that I loved as a kid. Like, I don't know, did you ever see the movie Clueless?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I loved that movie. I went back to rewatch it and I was appalled. The female characters are so one-dimensional, they're really vapid. Um, Almost all of their motivation is related to men. And a lot of the ways in which, and this isn't the only movie, there's literally a movie called Mean Girls that was insanely popular when I was growing up, and it was really funny. And now I go back and I see some of the damage that can be translated in that film if you don't have enough context to go, okay, this is just an archetype of woman. But if you're learning how to be a woman from what's coming into you, which your subconscious is just being constantly programmed when you're a kid, the vision of what it was to be a woman and relate to other women was cast by men, and it
Mm.
was all male centered. And they would literally fight for reputation to get attention from the hot boy at school, who was kind of a piece of shit. And the only thing he had going for him was he had popular status and maybe he was cute. But he also was painted as two-dimensional and vapid and just womanizer and da-da. So we have these templates. And so of course it makes sense to me that we're enacting these things because it's what we've seen, and then we're trying to learn how to relate to other kids, and then we're just doing what we think we're supposed to do because we have no fucking clue. Yeah, I just there's so much going on in our culture all the time, and especially now with all this information that's coming in. I can only imagine what it's like now when you fully grow up on social media. There's so much beauty in it, and then there's also a lot more of the same.
And that's what I was about to say. Actually, I think it's interesting because it creates an opportunity or a space for people to go down different paths. But I feel like the path you choose, you're probably going to go really far down that path when you enter into the like, you know, this kind of like this silo, this echo chamber of the path you go down, you'll get shown more of the things that that path includes. So I imagine that whilst at the beginning there's a blank canvas, but as soon as you start to color a little bit of color, more of the color starts flying on immediately until you believe that is the way. I can really imagine something like that is arising for like the next generation.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I had this kind of profound realization that the benefit of the access that we have to other humans now is really hearing other human stories. And we were so limited in that when we were growing up, right? You had what was ever close to you, and that's going to be homogenized to a certain degree because you live in a small area. And you're also a kid who doesn't have autonomy to go out and adventure, right? You kind of got to stick in your routine, and you go to school with the same kids. Even I moved around quite a bit, and it's not like it was so different that I had such an amazing experience to blow my mind. So I'm like limited in relatability, and there wasn't representation of girls and women who looked like me. I went through a whole thing with my hair, and because I have really curly hair, it's like pulled back now, but I have really curly, kinky hair. I'm actually mixed, so that was even a bigger issue because my hair, it wasn't white girl hair, it wasn't black girl hair. What do I do with it? Um, and I just needed to have hot girl hair, so I burned and straightened the shit out of it. I actually, at one point, when I was, like you said, walking down a path the exact opposite direction of who I was, I call it my Karen era. I I was bleaching my hair white blonde like Dany Targaryen from Game of Thrones, like that exact color, and I was straightening the crap out of it. I was just burning it to the point where like I didn't really have curls anymore because I damaged my hair so heavily. And I realized so much of that was because I didn't see any women like me who I was proud of. They just weren't around. And so now you can go on social media and find a bunch of people who look like you, act like you, believe the same things that you do. And while there's also the potential to double down on dogma that's not healthy in that space, there's also an infinite number of possibilities that finally someone you can relate to. Oh, thank God, there's not alone. Oh, this resonates with me. I feel inspired by this. I don't feel like I need to compare myself. I feel like I can grow into this space. Having that access, I think, is really beautiful. And I'm really hopeful that now I feel like the technology has been out long enough. I think we've learned a lot of the pitfalls here that we're really teaching kids how to consume media, not what to think, but how to think about it and how to engage with it. And even when you were talking about the news in the morning and the night, I
Hmm.
immediately thought, well, our generation's version of that is getting on your phone. You know, getting on your phone and scrolling in the morning or doing that at night. It's not that much different. It's kind of the same thing, even though you're kind of picking your poison, so to say, with more choices. And just recognizing when we wake up, we're deeply connected to our subconscious and it's most easily programmable time. And we can either wake up and be in total consumption, which is the exact fucking opposite of creation, or we can wake up and make choices for ourselves in our day and be intentional. That way, as we're moving through the day and life comes at us, we have a compass of, all right, I'm in anxiety right now. Do I want to choose to stay here? No, I woke up this morning and I chose I was going to be focused and enjoy. Okay, what do I need to do to get back there? Right. And then when we go to bed, right before we go to bed, is a really good time to program our subconscious as well before we go to sleep and literally go into REM and process the day. So I like to meditate first thing in the morning and I set my intentions and what I'm going to create for the day. And I have a mantra that I have a goddess affirmation that I do. And it's literally just casting a spell on myself. I'm powerful, I'm devoted, I'm kind, I'm gentle, all the things I choose to be. And then at night, I'll do my meditation and I will process through the day and I'll say, I'm listening. Does anything feel sticky for you? Is there anything in here that needs love? And if something from the day is looping in my subconscious, it'll come up and I'll go, okay, what are you feeling? How's that experience? Okay, critic, tell me what you think about it. Okay, thank you, heard, received. What I choose to do with this is blank, and I'll repeat it until I can feel it in my body. That way, when I go to bed, it's much more likely my brain will file it where I want it to file it instead of attaching it to an old trauma wound or creating a problem where there isn't one or all of those things. And so I'm hoping, I know a lot of this information is coming out now like, hey, don't get on your phone in the morning, have a morning routine. Hey, don't doom scroll before night. Hey, iPhone even put timers on your phone. If you need to like check yourself and be accountable, you can set a time limit for yourself. These things are coming out, so I'm feeling really hopeful that we're getting in deeper alignment with using these tools for love and for light and for connection instead of what we were using it for before, which is like trolling people and rigging elections and spreading lies and whatever.
Yeah, I think it's wild, really, isn't it? Because it's almost like food. Like we're all going to eat. So, but what are we choosing to eat? And I think that's kind of the same with what media are we consuming. You know, how frequently are we eating? Are we binge eating all the time? Are we habitually snacking on food that's just full of terrible things? And it's like the same with media. Are we constantly just checking in on things that aren't good for us? That are because it's still, it's things that we put into our body don't just go in through the mouth, don't just go in through the skin. It also goes in through the eyes, through the ears, and we process those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think bringing awareness to that, um, yeah, I mean, I think it seems like people get to a point in their life where they realize, okay, I've gone quite far off the track to what feels aligns. And I think the beautiful thing is there's so much out there now to be able to find examples of how to find alignment and balance. And even the conversations you and I are having and what you said about the personal story and the importance of it. Because one, people can relate to the personal story, but they're relating to someone who before, if we would hear personal stories, it would be of celebrities. And it's hard to relate.
Yep.
Whereas when it's people that are more quote unquote normal, I mean, whatever that means, I imagine you or I in most circles probably aren't considered normal with the things that we talk about. But you know, more relatable. And I think people can hear that story, they can see some of themselves in that, but also I think it gives everybody else permission to have their story. Like, what's your story? You get to have your story, and I think when people are being an example of not being a celebrity, but actually stepping into their own uniqueness, having their own story, being expressed, putting themselves out there, I think it allows other people to go, "Hey, I'm kind of like them. Maybe I can do that too. Oh, I want to paint my nails pink. Fuck yeah, let's do it."
Yeah, absolutely. And just like looping back to that freedom within, that whole concept, it's like if you are if you are truly in a misalignment and you're willing to look at that and you're willing to be in you don't know what you don't know and then open up to receive whatever is available to you, you're going to find these like pockets of freedom that just weren't there before because you've opened up this idea of possibility. And I think that's where I get excited now, just having like walked through enough of the unknown, and the anxiety and the all right, I'm going to do it anyway. I just always remember Mel Robbins says, the physiological experience of nervousness is like right next to the one of excitement, so you can just choose. I'm excited, and then you step into that space, and then you get the courage to share that deep shame. We know from Brene Brown's work, what does that do? It removes that tether. Shame can't, I think she says it in a metaphor of the way like shame can't live in the light. It's kind of like moss, it needs like darkness and dampness. So as soon as you speak the shame, it like loses all of its power. So that's been actually really powerful with the women that I work with is what are their stories that feel so shameful that they won't tell them to anybody else. And I create a space where those can be witnessed. And I can't tell you how often that's the only thing we had to do. In the time we were working together, I just had to get them safe enough in their body and with a witness to, this happened to me and I feel like this about it. Okay, I hear you. I see you. I acknowledge that. That sounds fucking awful. How do you feel about it now? What do you want to do with that? What do you want to create with that? And then all of a sudden they run around telling everybody else because they feel so fucking free now. So now they're telling everybody else. And it's like we're unshackling ourselves and then we unshackle other people. You can literally help them with their change just by releasing your own. And that's some mad freedom from within to not be scared of your own stories and to just, I'm not afraid of myself and what happened. Ah, it's out. You're free.
I love that you said that because the thing I was about to ask you is for women that might be listening that struggle with their expression of who they are, that struggle using their voice, what advice might you give? And I feel like some of that links into it is actually allowing themselves to maybe share some of the, because if you can share your shame, it kind of, I guess it becomes easier to share a lot more. And maybe actually desire, because very often we have shame linked to our desire. So there might be a lot of people that struggle to express their desires because they link some shame to it. So if we can get to that place of expressing our shame, maybe also it releases us to express our desire as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It really, depending on where you are in your journey, I might have like a different specific place to start because I'm a big fan of lowest hanging fruit. We're not going to go 0 to 100. We're going to take our time. You're worth slowing down for. That's something that I notice. A lot of my clients struggle with is like feeling like they need to have all the answers now and rush and they just need to get it over with. And that's a part of the conditioning and the creation of the problem. But usually the place that I start is just what do you want to experience? We go right to it. What do you want? And that's often where it's like and I give examples and things and usually I just say let's pick energies that you want to experience because when we can connect to an energy that we feel in our body, and this is usually the first practice where I get them to check into their body. So I'll say I'm going to say a lot of words. If you feel any of them in your body, like when you say them to yourself you can feel it, choose that word. So I'll just list off ones that I love, freedom, joy, intimacy, connection, equanimity, whatever. I'll just throw out whatever words, and they're usually relatively attuned because I've checked in and we've connected. So I just start saying them: powerful, strong, devoted, reliable, trustworthy, safe. And then we pick 2 to 3, no more than 4, because then your brain starts getting discombobulated and remembering them, and we want to be able to pull them up. But we get immediately connected to what do you want, like what feels good in your body to create. And by starting there, you literally shine a spotlight on your desire, and the shadows become apparent because there's contrast. Oh my God, this relationship I'm in over here doesn't have any of this in it. Fuck. Oh my God, my job, not that at all. Oh my God, where I live, not that at all. So now, because we have like, hey, this is what you want, where are we misaligned? Then it's like, okay, well, I'm not doing it over here. Okay, well, why not? And then that's when all the fears start to come up, and inevitably we find a shame story. We find a shame connection, and then from there it's just their choice of when they get it out and when they don't. And I found, for me, when I started my journey, I signed up with my mentor. I was 26 or 27. It's $12,000. I'd never spent that much money on anything, much less myself. But it just, my soul was like, do it, figure it out later. So I did. Her name's Nisha Moodley. I fucking love her. She still teaches me. She's just in my mind all the time, whispering her wisdom. And she spoke of sisterhood. And I didn't know I needed it until I found her. And I was like, there's something in this for me. And I went, and I was so terrified to commune with these women. And I was so terrified to be vulnerable and to share. And I did it anyway. And the more they shared, and they were sharing things that were just so much more wild than what I had ever been through, it just gave me permission to go, well, I can share mine then. And then I just realized in this, it was just pure witnessing. Nobody was offering advice. Nobody was trying to change or fix. They just held the space and reflected love. It just kind of let these things evaporate, or at least loosen up, become a helium balloon that I didn't feel trapped in it. It was like all right, one day I'm going to pop this balloon. I know I can do that now. And so that's really a huge part of why I started my women's group, Rise and Run, was because, like, this communion that we have, like, women are biologically wired to commune in this way. We used to survive by telling each other everything, right? And we would share stories and like, that's how we're wired. If we get back to that and honor how our bodies naturally work, and we create this safety and we heal these wounds, maybe we don't have to sit in our suffering for decades and decades. Maybe we experience it and then it's over and then we move on. That's the possibility I want to create. And I've just noticed that when you really finally have a safe space to be received with unconditional love, that does more than 5 years of talk therapy ever could.
Yeah, because it's not an intellectual understanding, is it? It's an embodied feeling. You feel it.
Yes, exactly. And it's impossible to feel your desires if you don't feel anything else. When you cut off feeling one thing, you cut off feeling the other thing. The law of polarity, there aren't actually two different energies. It's one energy in different poles. The simplest example that they teach in the Kabbalion is temperature. There's not hot and cold temperature, there's just temperature. And it's either turned up to the pole where it's hot, or turned down in the absence of heat and it's cold. And that's really what all things are, right? Wherever there is fear, the opposite pole is love. So if you're willing to feel the fear, guess what? You open up the possibility of feeling the love. And the more you allow that, allow it all, anima mundi, accept all, reject none, the more you allow that, the more you can shift your center from over here to 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 over here, to where you're really vibrating in the love more often. And when you do get pulled back into the shadow, it's not as deep. You don't go to that deep despair pit where you want to kill yourself. You go back into, oh, today's tough. I'm tired. All right, self-compassion. I'm going to take a break today. I'm just going to let it be a low day. I know I'm going to slingshot back to love tomorrow because I'm showing up in love now. That's kind of this, hey, we're just going to walk out of the dark, and then we're going to move farther into the light, so that when there is a slide back, it's not that severe. And then eventually you just kind of swing like this. It's not this wild pendulum swing. It's just, I'm grounded. I'm centered. Here we go. Yeah.
I love it. Last one. What does it mean to you to be able to facilitate this for other women?
Oh my God, it's the most humbling and powerful and nourishing experience of my life. It's been, oh, talk about gratitude. I've been in so much gratitude lately to everything and everyone. It's so purposeful to me. And, my vision for world peace is not complicated, it's really simple. And I think that's why I trust it. If we all take excellent care of ourselves, extreme ownership, all in no matter what, we're taking extremely excellent care of everyone else. And what if everybody woke up every day and wanted to live and loved themselves and acted in that? Would we have any of the problems we have? No, I genuinely think that would solve all the world problems we really have on a large scale today. And I'm on a mission one by one to just, hey, take excellent care of yourself. I'll be walking permission of that. And I walk it in a way where I know to keep it, I have to give it back. I have to keep that giving and receiving cycle clean and open. So as soon as I receive, pour it back out. Just trusting there's always going to be enough for me. There's always going to be enough for me. There's enough for me, so there's enough for everyone else. If I take up more space, I create more seats at the table, not less. So really just being able to have the privilege and blessing to have been walking this path, to have been introduced to it at such a young age, and to be able to turn around and give it back in such a powerful way in my early 30s just feels like I'm in heaven on earth. I'm the luckiest woman in the entire world. Like, I get to do this. This gets to be my job. I get to talk to you for an hour and a half, and it's part of my work, my soul work. Oh, it's so humbling and just so much gratitude. And I want that for everyone. I want to help everyone just slide into their little spot in the universe and just let it flow.
Beautiful. I'm going to add links in the show notes and description, but where's the best place for people to find and connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest place is Instagram. My handle's at Liv Wickedly. That's where I do like the most actual conversation with people back and forth. I also have a website, livewickedly.com. If you want to check out my website and book a call with me, you can do a free consult. I do a 45-minute one, and I just hold space. A lot of people will just pop on there to have the space. They don't necessarily do anything after that. And then there are other links on my Instagram if you want to get connected to, like, if you want to check out my women's group. I have it's a monthly subscription. It's only $77 US, so it's not expensive. We do 4 calls a month that are the group only. And then I also have events that are open to the public. So it's just best to follow me on Instagram because I post all that stuff, and you can just join whenever you feel like it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I hope we can do it again because I really want to get into, I want to talk about psychedelics as well. And I'm aware that we're out of time this time. So maybe next time we can get
Uh,
onto that.
I would love to. My relationship with psychedelics is so fun, and yeah, I won't start it here, but there's a lot there. I would love to talk about that, and maybe even talking about sex and intimacy, since that's a lot of the work that Scott and I do, and that was my true path to freedom, was when I was willing to open that door, and I think that's true for a lot of men and women. Yeah, healing all that.
Well, part two coming up.
Yeah, hell yeah! Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who chose to listen to me talk.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much.